Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Play, Pause, Repeat. I'm your host, Brayden. In today's episode, I'm going to be doing something different. Today, I will look over and review The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, a science fiction novel released in 1950 about human exploration of Mars and civilization there. It incorporates some of Bradbury's wildest fictions, whether horror, humor, surprise, grief, sorrow, themes, anything. Just imaginary literature, poems, everything. I absolutely adore this book. It's so beautifully written. Everything, the narrative, the structure, the short stories, the entire chronicle of space, travel, humans and Martians interacting on the red planet. Everything was so well crafted. Do note, in this episode there are spoilers, so if you haven't read The Martian Chronicles yet, I highly recommend you do before this episode. If not, you can always choose to listen to this episode whenever you like. But make sure to follow Play, Pause, Repeat on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube, as we provide coverage, news, and rankings on anything in pop culture, whether it's sports, TV, films, movies, video games, or anything like books. Thank you, and let's get into the episode. So now let's get into the meat of this episode about The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. The first part of this book by Bradbury is the chapters that explore humans arriving on Mars in their first expeditions, the early contact with the Martians on the Red Planet, and how humans try to settle on this new planet they found. So the first chapter I want to talk about is chapter number 4 of the book. It's called The Earthmen. In this chapter, the second expedition of humans onto Mars is a 3-man crew, and they go to Mars and they land there. They land safely without any cause. So they go straight to the Martians and start talking with them. They explain to themselves, "We are human travelers from a place we call Earth. This is a new planet to us we call Mars. Can you help us get into the culture, society, and help us settle here?" To that, the Martians are actually very sarcastic about it and say, yeah. So, the thing is that the Martians believe that these Earthmen, who call this place of Mars their home, they think that these humans are insane. So in that case, the Martians put these 3 human explorers into insane asylums. Why, you may ask? The reason why is because the Martians believe that this place of Mars is their home. To the Martians, Mars is a place that they have resided their entire lives, but to the Earthmen, Mars is a new place, a new planet, and a new destination. I like the idea of, oh no, you're not that thing. No, you're not a person who from Earth, you're a Martian. You're just an insane person. The theme that Bradbury imposes here is psychological misunderstanding. How people assume things are different than others just because we think we know more than someone else. The Martians misunderstood the ideas and thoughts of the humans, not realizing that they're actually from another planet they call Earth, and instead are venturing out to Mars. That is the end of the story. Moving on to the third expedition, chapter 6, and if you didn't tell by the title, it is the third expedition in the book. In this one, the humans reach Mars and are looking for a place to settle. As the third expedition is a much larger party than 3 people, but this time, the humans actually enter the city. In the city, they meet something random. One of the crew members sees someone he recognizes. You may ask how that person was. That person ends up being his long-lost, dead grandparents. In any case that you might see that, you run up to them. He starts hugging them, starts reconnecting, and eventually goes to eat with them and sleep in their house. That happens to every single one of the crew members on the third expedition. They all see dead brothers, dead relatives, dead sisters, dead brothers. You see, though, that's not the case. The Martians actually disguise themselves as those dead relatives, as those dead parents, as everything that the humans loved and lost. So now, the Martians trick the humans into their own houses. And at the end of the scene, the Captain Wilder, his brother eventually tricks him as he tries to escape now realizing that the Martians are tricking them. And at the end of the scene, the entire row of caskets carried out with the humans that got tricked by the Martians. Bradbury's theme is absolutely phenomenal. He just decides to make us believe that the humans are safe, but they were not actually. It depicts how humans and people are easily manipulated based on our nostalgia, thoughts, emotions, and feelings. How we long for something bigger, and we're willing to take risks without knowing any consequences before we actually dive into the fire. I just love how he implemented the idea of caskets walking out at the end of the scene. He depicts it and shows vivid imagery. Very absolute phenomenal writing. The third part and third chapter of this first part that I want to talk about is the seventh chapter, that being And the Moon Be Still as Bright. This is another expedition chapter. And in this one, the Martians are no longer there. Why, you may ask? It's because of prior expeditions to Mars resulted in the Martians dying via chickenpox from the humans that spread it to them. So after many, many years of traveling, the astronauts and human explorers start partying because they landed on Mars for now. They found new life on a new planet and can now bring their families and society onto the red planet. However, one of the members, named Spender, he sees this as a disgrace to Martian culture, and he starts going rogue. In turn, he silently kills every single one, not every single one, but a couple of his crewmates, and eventually everyone turns on him. The captain eventually confronts Spender and asks him, "Well, Spender, why are you doing this?" Spender replies, "It's because I see the beauty of Martian culture. I see they actually value things that us humans don't covet. They value religion, they value art, they value culture, and I want to keep that. I want to maintain that. If humans come and civilize on this red planet, they're going to destroy the Martian culture. I'm not going to let that happen." So what happens at the end? Well, the captain gives Spender a chance to escape, except the captain fires a bullet, and Spender does not run. He takes the bullet and dies. End of story. Nothing happens. We never know what happens to Spender. We now know he's dead, I assume. Maybe he lives a different life, maybe. But then, that's an end of story. The theme for this chapter of And the Moon Be Still as Bright is about how us humans commercialize and colonize places on Earth that are different from us, and we don't want to preserve it. Spender wanted to preserve the culture of the Martians. He wanted to preserve the religion, the arts, and the beauty of it. He wants them to live a life of preservation and natural beauty. That's the last chapter of this part. Moving on to the second part of the Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. This second part of the Martian Chronicles is the largest one. It's about how humans actually implement their society onto the red planet of Mars. So let me go into the first chapter of this part. The first chapter I want to talk about is actually a combination of chapters. So I decided to combine Chapter 8, The Settlers, and Chapter 10, The Locusts. Why, you may ask? It's because they're very interconnected. The Settlers depicts men escaping their loneliness from Earth and arriving onto Mars. It shows how they're desperate and cravings for something bigger. In that case, the mass migration is compared to locusts in Chapter 10, with human rockets burning Mars' nature in its beauty, down through the flames. The meadows and the nature of Mars is turned into magma, a very interesting story by Bradbury. It talks about aggressive colonization and the lack of care for humans on Mars. So, the next chapter is Chapter 11, The Night Meeting, and it depicts a human traveler named Tomas Gomez as he goes on his nightly drive through the city on Martian planet. As he goes on his drive, his car hits something random. It appears that he hits the car of a phantom Martian. The thing is, even though they can communicate with each other, they can actually not physically touch each other, nor can they see the same things as each other. So while Tomas Gomez, the human, sees a barren wasteland in the area, a dead city that's been dead for years, that once was prosperous for Martians, the Phantom Martian sees something else. It sees a beautiful paradise, beauty, everything that it lives for. However, they quickly realize that they're actually from different time periods. In that case, they don't see the same thing as each other. Why? Because Martian society and human society are in different time frames. In that case, they come to a mutual agreement and part ways. They stop arguing and understand that they're both right, even though each other thinks the other person is wrong. It shows how us humans can negotiate and compromise deals without having to argue or bicker. I just love the insane storytelling by Mr. Bradbury. I think the reason why this is such a good chapter in this book is because it depicts something random. Like, you always picture someone driving down on a mountainside, which is where the setting takes place in this. You see in the movies, the dim lights and all, and then a sudden pop just appears like a surprise. And when I think about this, you're just thinking, oh, what just happened? And then you see that the Phantom Martian appeared, and like it just goes like haywire with that, but then it resolves. Moving on to my favorite chapter in the book, chapter 18, Usher 2, is an absolute horrific and horror story filled with death, murder, and haunted houses. So in this one, our protagonist, William Stenhall, is a former book collector who has a large collection of books, specifically those of Edgar Allan Poe, who he appreciates really much. However, Mr. Garrett, who's an inspector in the Moore Climate Society, an organization that's part of the government that looks to censor, ban, and burn any books, film, media, literature, or anything else that involves arts. And the reason why they do this is for many reasons, mainly for political reasons, but they basically censor and burn all those books. In that case, Mr. Stenhall flees to Mars, and along with his co-worker in Pikes, who was a former actor who had his films burned by the Moore Climate Society, they build a haunted house. So, Mr. Stenhall invites Mr. Garrett and the Moore Climate Society into the haunted house. But while they get in there, Mr. Garrett notices something very odd. First off, a woman is killed by an ape who stuffs her into a chimney. Then a man is killed by a razor and a pendulum. The thing is, at the last moment, as soon as those people died, a robotic or actual person, the person that just died in front of his eyes, appears and says, I'm okay, the person you just witnessed die was just me as a robot. There's nothing to worry here. So Mr. Garrett's all fine and worry, like, there's nothing to worry about here. They're just doing this for show. All these murders are just robotic figurines of us Moore Climate Society people. There's nothing to fear. But then Mr. Garrett gets locked into chains, and then the big secret is revealed. Mr. Stenhall says, so you thought those people were just robots. Those were actually the real people. Insane plot twist. It was insanity. Insane writing by Bradbury. But then Mr. Garrett comes to the realization that he's gonna die. That he's about to die. He's locked in chains. And how you may ask he dies, Mr. Garrett? Well, entire brick wall encloses on him and basically kills him to death. Very clever ideas and phrases by Bradbury, because it's a reference to Edgar Allan Poe, to the cask of Amontillado, a very important story by Poe's literature prose. And every single murder scene in this chapter of Usher 2 was actually an application of any one of Edgar Allan Poe's works. For example, the ape in the chimney, the rogue in the morgue, everything was a reference to Edgar Allan Poe. I just love how Bradbury does this to honor someone. Very creative writing. So, yeah, the idea of censorship versus imagination, how us humans and people don't let imagination run free. How Stenhall and Pikes wanted their creation to exist fully without any human intervention. The Moore Climate Society and Mr. Garrett don't allow that, so they get creatively killed by Mr. Stenhall and Pikes. Moving on to the next chapter in this part, it's The Martian, the 20th chapter of the book. The main characters are an old couple who one day see their dead son reappear, whose name is Tom, and they counter him as a shape-shifting Martian. The problem with this shape-shifting Martian named Tom is that he can appear as anybody he wants to based on what someone's desire is. So this Martian jumps out into the night and visits this grieving family who lost their daughter. He acts as his daughter and actually starts to feel close to this family and begins to actually get into their feelings and emotions, thinking that their dead daughter is somehow alive. He does this with many people in the town, like a dead prisoner, a dead worker, a dead conductor, anything that someone relates to. Eventually, at the end of the chapter, there's an entire scene where Tom, the dead Martian who shapeshifts, becomes everything at once. The night scene where the boat is surrounded by all these people in the town, the Martian quickly shapeshifts into whatever name is called out. So when someone says the prisoner's name, it turns into the prisoner. When someone says the daughter's name, it turns into the daughter. When someone says Tom, the son's name, it turns into Tom. But whatever it turns into, it eventually goes haywire and just ends up dying. So Bradbury just shows how everyone in the town projects their selfish reasons and their grief because they're that gullible and willing to sacrifice anything to see the loved one again. Yeah. Then you have the funniest one of this story, the off-season, at least for me. So Sam Parkhill is a former astronaut who opens a hot dog stand on Mars. In this one, he is willing to make big money because he expects a large migration from Earth of humans onto Mars. In that case, while he's driving his ship, he crashes and kills a Martian girl accidentally. Eventually, he gets chased by Martians, and in a huge pirate ship, I believe, scene, he runs away, because of course he would. Why wouldn't he? But eventually the Martians come in peace. They say they're not going to kill him, and they're actually offering basically half of Mars, a lot of acres of land of Mars in the Red Planet. So Sam sees this as an opportunity to make big money. He owns half of Mars, and now he has the opportunity to make even more money from the human travelers coming to Mars. However, the biggest surprise ever happens. You won't believe it, but Earth catches on fire right in front of Sam's eyes. And as he looks in disbelief and grief, he's like, oh my, it's happening, it's burning. Why is this happening to me? But the idea, that surprise. So the thing is, I actually predicted this to happen. When I was reading this, I saw how the Martians were just letting Sam Parker off the hook. Like, you killed one of our fellow Martians, and you think you're just going to get off that easily? Well, it's not the case. Well, I knew something was going to bad happen to Sam Parker, and I started putting the dots together, and it's like, well, maybe Earth is going to get destroyed, or maybe other people are going to die on that expedition. But yeah, insane humorous story by Mr. Bradbury. I just love how he added that one punchline. Like, the wife says, I guess it's going to be a long off-season, hint the title of the chapter. So, Sam's greed eventually got to him, his gullibility got to him, and his idea to obsess over money and materialism eventually got to him because he got no money. He failed to forgive himself and receive forgiveness from the Martians for killing that poor girl, but eventually he got karma. So the final part of the Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury talks about nuclear destruction, nuclear war on Mars and Earth. Well, mainly on Earth. It doesn't happen on Mars, but it actually really affects Mars a lot because all the humans leave and they go back to Earth and then they all die. And the aftermath it has on both planets. So first off, The Long Years is the 23rd chapter of the book. And we bring back a character from a previous chapter, that being In the Moon Be Still As Bright, that being Captain Wilder. Him and his crew visit a former astronaut that they work with named Hathaway. Hathaway lives on the Red Planet on Mars by himself. However, the thing is that he has an entire family with him. He has a wife and some kids. But once the captain and his crew gets there, they realize that Hathaway built all of his family as robots. His family passed away years ago, but he felt isolated and lonely, so he built these robots to keep him in company. And then they leave. That's the entire story. But it shows how halfway struggle from isolation, from grief, from everything that he feels so sorrow about and can't take it anymore. He feels that need to give back and have back his wife, his kids, and everything that he loved in life. He built those robots because he felt this lonely, like he was missing something from his life, the loved ones he missed so desperately much. It just shows how people are willing to do anything just to feel something again, to feel the moment again, to feel love, to feel wanted, to feel anything. Barry just breaks it into a very good telling story of Martians on Earth, and the captain does something very important about it. The way he does this is that he notices something when he landed. He notices the graves of the dead family. So he sends out one of his co-workers to go scour it out, and he confirms that Hathaway's family died years ago. That case, absolutely phenomenal story. The second to last chapter, the penultimate one, was actually probably the most famous one. It's actually regarded as one of the best ones by him because it's actually a poem he previously made before publishing the Martian Chronicles. It is called There Comes Soft Rains. The 24th chapter of the book, I believe I actually may have read it before in another English class maybe, but an absolute beautiful story. It depicts a house in California after nuclear devastation. Now you may ask, how's this house still standing? Well, everything around it is burning down, dead from the bombs, everything. Somehow this house is barely standing, still alive. The thing is that there was no humans there because obviously they died from the nuclear explosion, but everything, like the dishwasher, the robots, the commands, they still run. For example, the shower for the person that used to live there still runs on a set schedule. The breakfast is still made at a set schedule. The alarm's still off. Everything goes off, even when humans aren't there. It still runs, even though the owner's not there. Even after nuclear devastation, the technology still runs on a set operated schedule. It just shows how empty the world is without humans. Basically, how the world still functions even without humans. How everything keeps on going forwards, even if there's no humans. The future technology will take us over. We'll have robots doing everything. And keep in mind, Bradbury released this in 1950 during a time where there was no iPhones and barely any kind of like automobiles and mechanics and basically any robots. But now in the 2026 now, and there's definitely stuff like that, like Alexa. Sorry, trying to make sure my Alexa does not get triggered. But the Alexa and stuff, like how it just sets our alarms, tells us when to do things, like, bam, thing, this is when you do the dishwasher, this is when you do the shower, everything. Basically shows how us humans evolved as a society, and shows how we're basically relying on technology to even exist, basically. The final chapter in this book has probably the best kind of idea of authorship by Bradbury I like the most. It's called The Million Year Picnic. So a family on a private rocket travels to Mars because they want to escape Earth. It's after the nuclear devastation, keep that in mind. So they escaped Earth's burns, and so the father orders his sons to burn all of their accessions and all their things that they own from Earth, like their passports, their identity, and they create a new society on Mars. They even bring some of their friends over to create a new civilization on the red planet. But as the story ends and the entire book closes on the last pages, Bradbury has some of the best literary prose I've ever seen in my life. Why, you may ask? Well, when the son asks, "So Dad, you've been talking about all these Martians for so long. Where are they?" And the dad points at him and says, "Look at the reflection from the water, and you're looking at them right now." That turns means they're the new Martians because they now settled and now live on Mars. The Martians that you may see as aliens, they kind of exist, kind of don't exist, but we're the new Martians. Just because we're human does not mean we're not Martians. Insane story writing from Bradbury. One of the best novels I ever written, in my opinion at least. I just love his idea of imagination, his structure, everything he written. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I am Brayden, the host of Play, Pause, Repeat. Today's episode, I looked over and reviewed the Martian Chronicles, Ray Bradbury's sci-fi novel, released in 1950. I looked over the chapters. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, make sure to follow Play, Pause, Repeat on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, or wherever you may get your podcasts. And make sure to follow, share, and listen. Thank you.